In forgotten meadows and windswept prairies, a wild guardian quietly lifts its crown toward the summer sun. For centuries, healers, travelers, and dreamers have gathered around this mysterious bloom, believing it carried a strength all its own. Echinacea is often reached for at the first sign of illness, but behind this striking purple flower is a much older story of snakebite medicine, prairie survival, indigenous plant wisdom, and the body's extraordinary ability to heal. Welcome to the Green Room Apothecary, a place where plants are more than remedies or medicine. They're remembered wisdom, part of our collective living history. Step into the garden with me to explore the history, folklore, and science behind the herbs that have shaped human healing for centuries. Whether you're here to learn something new, to unwind, or to gently drift off to sleep, I'm so happy you're here. I'm your host, Nimue, and this is where ancient wisdom meets modern life. Before we prepare this space with a brief guided meditation about Echinacea, I'd love for you to tell me where you are and what time it is as you're listening. I love imagining this space connecting across different places and times. And if you've spent time with Echinacea, I'd love to hear what your experience has been. Now, let's sink into a moment of presence with the energy of this plant. Wherever you are, allow your body to soften slightly. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. And take a slow breath in and a gentle breath out. Now, imagine you're standing in an open field. It's late summer. Sunlight stretches wide across the land, warm and steady. The air is dry, alive with the quiet hum of insects and distant movement. All around you, tall stems rise from the earth. And at the top of each one, a bloom. Echinacea, strong, upright, unwavering. Its petals fall gently downward, like a skirt of soft purple or pale pink, framing a bold, spiked center, almost like a crown or a shield. Step closer. Notice how sturdy the stem feels, rooted deeply into the soil beneath it. This is not a delicate plant. It doesn't bend easily. It stands its ground. Reach out your hand. Run your fingers lightly along the stem, then up toward the flower. There's a quiet strength here, a presence that doesn't demand attention, but holds it anyway. Now, bend down and gently harvest a piece of the root. Bring it closer, and as you taste it, there's something immediate. A subtle tingling, a faint numbness, a sensation that spreads slowly across your tongue. Stay with that feeling. Notice how it wakes something up in your body, not a softening, but an activation, a reminder that your body knows how to respond, that it knows how to protect, that it isn't fragile, but intelligent, adaptable, and aware. Take another slow breath in. Feel into your chest, your throat, your body as a whole. Echinacea doesn't quiet the system. It supports it. It stands beside you like a quiet guardian, not doing the work for you, but reminding your body how to do it for itself. And stay here for just a moment. Breathing in, breathing out. Feel into that subtle sense of readiness, of resilience, of quiet strength. And when you're ready, let the image begin to fade. The field softens. The flowers blur into the distance. But see if you can carry that feeling with you. That sense of being supported, awake, and capable. Because as we move into the story of Echinacea, its history, the science, the medicine, this is the energy people have been turning to for generations. Not just to soothe the body, but to strengthen it. Tonight, we're stepping into the world of Echinacea, also known as the purple coneflower. We'll wander through the ways Native American tribes revered it as elk root, turning to it as a trusted ally for everything from wounds to venomous snake bites. We'll trace how centuries later, a 19th century patent medicine salesman transformed it into one of America's most beloved blood purifiers. And then we'll gently return to the present moment, where modern science is beginning to understand how its unique, tongue-tingling compounds interact with the body, supporting and guiding the immune system through seasons of stress and illness. So, before we begin to understand how Echinacea works within the body, we have to listen for the story it's been telling for generations. Let's step away from the modern world for a moment and return to the open plains where this plant first took root to uncover the ancient spirit it carries. The word Echinacea comes from the Greek word echinos, meaning hedgehog or sea urchin. And if you've ever run your thumb gently across the raised spiky cone at the center of the flower, you can feel exactly why that name was chosen. Its botanical name, Echinacea purpurea, simply means reddish purple, a quiet nod to its soft, vibrant petals. But long before it was named in Greek or Latin, this plant carried many names across the North American continent, where it is exclusively native. And those names tell a very different kind of story. To the Ute people, it was known as elk root, born from the belief that a wounded or sick elk would instinctively seek out the plant as medicine. The Delaware tribe called it horse hobbleweed. The Kiowa Apache referred to it as Ize Iso He, meaning medicine makes you numb. And that numbing sensation is more than just a poetic description. It's something that you can actually feel. Echinacea is rich in compounds called alkamides, which create a distinct tingling, almost electric sensation on the tongue when this root is chewed. For plains tribes like the Cheyenne and Pawnee, this wasn't just interesting, it was deeply practical. They used the root to relieve toothaches and soothe sore throats, letting the sensation do its quiet work. But this plant wasn't used occasionally. It was woven into daily life, ceremony, and survival. Archaeological evidence shows that Echinacea has been used for centuries, with roots dating back to between 1600 and 1800, discovered in a Pawnee earthen lodge near Guide Rock, Nebraska. For tribes across the Great Plains and the Midwest, Echinacea was considered a sacred life medicine. In Lakota and Cheyenne traditions, the roots were burned in sweat lodge ceremonies, accompanied by prayer and song to cleanse both body and spirit. The Cheyenne also chewed the root during the Sundance ritual, stimulating saliva to help endure long periods without water. Its uses extended beyond humans, too. Smoke from the plant was blown into the nostrils of agitated horses to calm them, or used to treat equine illness. Perhaps the most enduring piece of Echinacea's story lies in its relationship with danger. Echinacea became widely known as snake root, believed to act as an antidote for venomous bites and even rabies. According to tradition, chewing the root or applying it as a poultice would help draw out venom, and just as importantly, negative energy. This belief carried forward into early American history too. During the Lewis and Clark expedition, the explorers were given the root by an English trader who claimed it could cure rattlesnake bites. Meriwether Lewis was intrigued enough to send specimens back to Thomas Jefferson, describing it as a valuable remedy for both snakebite and what was then called mad dog. But the story takes a more unusual turn as we move into the 19th century. In the 1870s, a German immigrant named H.C.F. Meyer began selling Echinacea as Meyer's blood purifier. He learned about the plant from Native American communities and became convinced of its power. He marketed it boldly as a remedy for everything from rheumatism and neuralgia to diphtheria and snakebite. When two respected physicians of the eclectic medical movement dismissed his claims, Meyer responded in a way that feels almost unbelievable. He offered to bring a live rattlesnake to Cincinnati and allow it to bite him repeatedly while using only his Echinacea tonic as treatment. The doctors declined, but over time they began testing the plant more seriously, and by 1921, Echinacea had become one of the most widely prescribed botanical remedies in America. From there, its journey continued, crossing oceans and reshaping global herbal medicine. In the 1930s, a German physician named Gerard Medeus traveled to the United States in search of Echinacea angustifolia, which was considered the most medicinally potent species. Unable to get cuttings, he purchased seeds from a Chicago store and brought them back to Germany. When they grew, he realized he had accidentally purchased Echinacea purpurea instead. Because this species was easier to cultivate, it became the focus of European research. And that small mistake helped shape the global herbal industry we know today. Echinacea's story doesn't live only in the medicine, though. It also lives in meaning, symbolism, and ritual. In modern herbal magic and green witchcraft, Echinacea is often associated with resilience, purification, and inner strength. Because it thrives in difficult conditions, Echinacea is often seen as a plant of endurance and vitality. Like many plants that grow in harsh, sun-soaked landscapes, it doesn't just survive, it adapts, it roots deeper, and finds a way to flourish. And in working with it, there's a quiet sense that it offers that same resilience back to us, an invitation to meet challenge with strength, steadiness, and trust in our own ability to endure. Astrologically, it's linked to the sun, reflecting its life-giving and protective qualities, and to the signs of Virgo and Leo. In the tarot, it aligns closely with the Strength card. Practitioners sometimes use Echinacea to amplify intention, especially when facing challenges that require persistence. There are traditions that suggest carrying or using the root in ritual can enhance vitality or focus. Other pieces of folklore connect the plant to prosperity, fertility, and even expanded perception, although these uses vary widely depending on the tradition and interpretation. In more symbolic systems, Echinacea represents transformation, the movement from imbalance into strength, from illness into resilience. And even today, some biodynamic farmers plant Echinacea seeds during the waxing moon, honoring its connection to growth and vitality. And while its roots are deeply North American, Echinacea has continued to evolve as it moves through different cultures. Because Echinacea is native to North America, it doesn't appear in ancient Chinese or Ayurvedic texts. But as global trade expanded, it was gradually incorporated into these systems. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's now considered cooling and pungent, used to clear heat and support the body's defensive energy. In Ayurveda, it's often viewed as pitta balancing and used alongside herbs like ashwagandha or tulsi. Even in modern global herbalism, Echinacea continues to find new roles, bridging traditional knowledge and contemporary use. And for generations, that understanding lived in story, in ritual, and in lived experience. But now, modern science is beginning to ask a different question. What is this plant actually doing inside the body to create that feeling of strength and support? Let's take a closer look and step into the science. What is actually happening on a molecular level when you drink that cup of coneflower tea or take a dropper full of tincture? Today, we're gently stepping into the laboratory to explore the inner workings of this plant, its active compounds, its physiological effects, the clinical evidence behind it, and the important safety considerations that allow us to work with it wisely. To truly understand Echinacea, let's begin with its chemistry. Unlike a pharmaceutical drug that relies on a single isolated compound, Echinacea's effects come from a complex, synergistic blend of phytochemicals. When researchers study the three primary medicinal species, Echinacea purpurea, Echinacea angustifolia, and Echinacea pallida, they focus on three main groups of active compounds: alkamides, caffeic acid derivatives, and polysaccharides. Each of these plays a different role within the body, and together they create the layered, multifaceted effects this plant is known for. Let's take a closer look at each of these, starting with the one you can actually feel. Let's start with the alkamides. If you've ever tasted echinacea root or taken a well-made tincture, you may have noticed a distinct tingling or numbing sensation on your tongue. That sensation is the alkamides at work. These compounds are lipophilic, meaning they extract best in alcohol, and they're found in their highest concentrations in the root of the plant. What's especially fascinating is that modern research has shown these alkamides are structurally similar to anandamide, a compound naturally produced in the human body. Because of this similarity, they're able to interact with the endocannabinoid system, specifically the CB2 receptors. This system plays a central role in regulating inflammation and pain. This helps explain why Echinacea has demonstrated notable anti-inflammatory and analgesic effects in laboratory settings, echoing its traditional use for toothaches, sore throats, and joint discomfort. And Echinacea's chemistry doesn't stop there. We also have the caffeic acid derivatives. These are water-soluble compounds, meaning succoric acid abundant in Echinacea purpurea and echinacea, found more prominently in the angustifolia and pallida variants. These compounds act as powerful antioxidants, helping to protect cells from oxidative stress and free radical damage. They also have demonstrated antiviral and antibacterial properties, supporting the body's natural defenses at a cellular level. And finally, we come to the compounds most closely tied to Echinacea's immune effects. Polysaccharides and glycoproteins are large, complex molecules found primarily in the aerial parts of the plant, the leaves and the flowers. In laboratory studies, these compounds are known for their ability to activate immune cells. They essentially act as signals, encouraging the body to pay attention, to respond, and to engage. So how do all of these compounds come together inside of the body? For many years, Echinacea was simply described as an immune stimulant. But modern researchers tend to use a more nuanced term, immunomodulator. Rather than simply increasing immune activity across the board, Echinacea appears to help regulate and fine-tune immune response. One of its primary actions is stimulating phagocytosis. This is the process by which white blood cells, especially macrophages, move through the body, identifying and engulfing foreign invaders like bacteria and cellular debris. By enhancing this activity, Echinacea supports the body's ability to monitor and respond to potential threats. It also influences the release of cytokines, the chemical messengers that help coordinate the inflammation and immune communication. And this is where we begin to see its role in everyday illness. Echinacea is widely known for its role in supporting the respiratory system, particularly during colds, flu, and upper respiratory infections. Clinical studies suggest that it's most effective when taken at the very first signs of illness. Early use appears to reduce the severity of symptoms and may shorten the duration of a cold by 1 to 2 days. It's less about prevention and more about response. And, in some cases, the effects extend even further. Laboratory studies have shown that Echinacea extracts can exhibit direct antiviral activity. They have demonstrated the ability to inactivate certain enveloped viruses, including influenza strains, herpes simplex, and some coronaviruses, by interfering with their ability to enter host cells and replicate. While this doesn't replace medical treatment, it helps explain why this plant has been trusted during times of illness for generations. And beyond internal use, Echinacea also works beautifully on the surface of the body. Topically, Echinacea is considered vulnerary, meaning it supports wound healing. Extracts and ointments have been shown to stimulate tissue regeneration and enhance the activity of fibroblasts, the cells responsible for building collagen. It also inhibits an enzyme called hyaluronidase. This enzyme is often used by bacteria and venom to break down protective barriers in the skin, allowing infection or toxins to spread. By slowing this process, Echinacea helps localize damage, supporting the body's ability to contain and heal. This aligns beautifully with its traditional use for snake bites and inflammatory conditions. And now, we arrive at an important part of the conversation: safety. Because while Echinacea is generally considered safe, natural does not always mean harmless. Overall, it has a strong safety profile, and when side effects do occur, they're typically mild and temporary, things like digestive discomfort or a mild skin reaction. There are just a few key things to keep in mind. First, allergy risk. Echinacea is part of the daisy family, so if you have sensitivities to plants like ragweed, chamomile, marigolds, it's best to approach it with caution, as some people can experience allergic reactions. Second, immune-related conditions. Because Echinacea interacts with the immune system, individuals with autoimmune or complex systemic conditions should check with a healthcare provider before using it regularly. And third, medication interactions. Echinacea can influence how certain drugs are processed in the liver, so if you're taking prescription medications, it's always smart to double-check before adding it into your routine. And lastly, for children, pregnancy, or breastfeeding, it's generally recommended to use Echinacea with guidance, simply because we don't have enough definitive research in those areas yet. And so, we arrive at the end of our time in the laboratory. What we see is something quietly remarkable: a plant whose complex chemistry, its alkamides, caffeic acids, and polysaccharides, work together to ease inflammation, support immune function, and help the body respond to illness. It's a beautiful example of how traditional knowledge and modern medicine can meet in the same place. So, the next time you see a purple coneflower standing quietly in a garden, or take a drop of its distinctive tingling tincture. Remember the path it's taken, from elk medicine to sacred ceremony, frontier remedy to modern herbal ally. It's a plant that's been trusted, tested, and returned to again and again, not just for what it does, but for what it represents: strength, resilience, and the quiet intelligence of the body remembering how to take care of itself. What we're seeing is something quietly remarkable. This isn't just folklore catching up with science. It's science catching up with something people have felt and trusted for generations. A plant that doesn't necessarily soften the edges, but steadies them. It doesn't quiet the body, but it supports it in remembering what it already knows how to do. And now that we understand how Echinacea works within the body, let's step back out of the lab, through the screen door, and into the open air, where this plant has always grown wild and resilient, and explore how we can begin to work with it in our own everyday lives. This is where knowledge becomes practice. Tonight, we're moving into the rhythms of harvesting, drying, storing, and preparing this powerful plant so that it can meet us not just in theory, but in everyday life. And as with many things in herbalism, it begins with patience. Let's start with the harvest. If you're growing Echinacea purpurea or Echinacea angustifolia at home, patience is essential. The roots generally need 2 to 4 years of growth before they reach a harvestable size. When the time comes, you'll want to dig them up in late fall, usually October or November, once the plant has gone dormant and the leaves have turned brown. There is a logic to this timing. It's when the plant has drawn its energy back into the root, and when the prized alkaloids are at their highest concentration. If you're harvesting the aerial parts, the leaves and the flowers, you'll want to gather them in the middle of summer during peak bloom. This is when the immune-supporting polysaccharides are at their most abundant. You can use scissors to cut the stems just above the lowest healthy leaf pairs. If you find yourself harvesting Echinacea in the wild, ethical gathering becomes really important. Over-harvesting has placed pressure on some wild populations, so it's best to take only 10 to 20% of a large patch, leaving younger plants undisturbed so the land can regenerate. And if you're collecting seeds to grow your own plants, wait until autumn when the seed heads have mostly dried in the plant, but before the heavy rains arrive. Cut the cone heads and allow them to finish drying in a paper bag. To remove the seeds, those small, lighter rice-like pieces, you may want to use a knife or scissors, protecting your fingers from the plant's sharp spines. And once you've gathered the plant, the next step is preserving its vitality. Once harvested, Echinacea needs to be processed with care. Its active compounds, particularly the alkaloids and the cacoic acid, are sensitive to both heat and moisture. So it's best to begin drying as soon as possible, before the natural enzymes begin to break things down. You can air dry the roots or leaves in a shaded, well-ventilated space for 1 to 2 weeks, allowing them to dry slowly and gently. Or, if you prefer a more controlled method, you can use a dehydrator on a low setting. Research suggests that the ideal temperature for preserving both cacoic acid and alkaloids is around 40 degrees Celsius, about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a delicate balance, warm enough to dry, but not so warm that you lose what makes the plant effective. And once your plant is fully dried, how you store it matters just as much. To preserve Echinacea's potency, store the dried roots or leaves in airtight glass containers, tucked away in a cool, dark place. Light, air, and heat all work quietly to degrade the plant's active compounds over time. It's best to keep the plant whole, or cut it into large pieces until you're ready to use it. You should avoid grinding it into a fine powder ahead of time, because increased exposure to air can quickly oxidize and diminish the alkamides. And now we arrive at the question most people are really asking: how do we actually use it? When it comes to echinacea, the way you prepare it shapes what you receive from it. All parts of the plant are edible and can be used, but each method draws out different compounds. So rather than there being one correct preparation, it becomes a matter of intention. What are you hoping to support? Let's begin with the preparation that brings out echinacea's most distinctive quality. If you're looking to access the tingling, numbing alkamides, the compounds responsible for echinacea's anti-inflammatory effects, alcohol is essential. Alkamides are lipophilic, meaning they dissolve best in fat and alcohol, not water. Using fresh roots will yield the most potent tincture, as it captures the plant's volatile compounds more fully. To make a tincture at home, you can fill a glass jar with 1 part freshly chopped echinacea, roots or aerial parts, and cover it with 2 parts high-proof alcohol, such as 80 to 100 proof vodka. Seal the jar and let it rest in a dark place, giving it a gentle shake each day for 4 to 6 weeks. When it's ready, strain the liquid and store it in a dark glass dropper bottle. At the first signs of a cold, a common adult dose is around 10 to 30 drops in a small amount of water, taken a few times throughout the day. But not all of echinacea's gifts are found in alcohol. If your intention is to work with echinacea's polysaccharides, the compounds that support immune signaling, a water-based preparation is more appropriate. Polysaccharides are water-soluble, and they can actually be lost in high concentrations of alcohol. For this, you can use dried roots or leaves to create a tea. Simply simmer about 1 teaspoon of dried root in a cup of water for 15 to 20 minutes. And the result is a grounding, slightly earthy tea that can be taken once or twice a day, especially during times of respiratory discomfort or sore throats. You might choose to add a tiny bit of honey or lemon, not just for flavor, but to soothe the tissues as well. And beyond home preparations, there are other forms you may come across. Commercially, particularly in Europe, echinacea is often prepared as a fresh pressed juice from the aerial parts of the plant. The juice is typically stabilized with a small amount of alcohol, around 22%, to preserve it. This form has been widely studied and used in clinical trials, particularly for supporting the body during the common cold. So, whether you find yourself simmering a cup of tea or placing a few drops of a bright, tingling tincture onto your tongue, there's something quietly powerful in understanding how to work with this plant. Because when you understand the nature of the compounds, how they move, how they extract, how they interact with the body, you begin to meet the plant on its own terms. And in doing so, you're able to receive the full depth of what echinacea has to offer. My first introduction to echinacea was visual. It's a plant that's hard to miss once you start noticing it, especially in the late summer months when it seems to rise up effortlessly from the landscape. The deep pink petals, the wide textured centers. There's something both bold and grounding about the way it grows. In certain places, it almost feels like part of the environment itself. Steady, reliable, quietly thriving. And for a while, that's how I knew it. Just something beautiful. Something I appreciated from a distance. Until at some point, I found myself reaching for it in a more practical way. During a time when my body was under stress, when I was looking for something to support me through it, I was introduced to a tincture that included echinacea, along with a few other herbs. And the first thing I noticed wasn't subtle. It was that unmistakable sensation, the way echinacea announces itself. A bright, almost electric tingling across the tongue, like a small spark or a firework moving through the body. It's one of those rare moments where you can actually feel a plant interacting with you in real time. And over the course of using it, there was a sense, subtle but noticeable, of things beginning to shift. My body finding its footing again, symptoms softening more quickly than I expected, and a quiet sense of support working just beneath the surface. From that point on, Echinacea became something more than just a beautiful plant in the landscape. It became something I recognized, and something I trusted, not as something that overrides the body, something that stands alongside it, supporting its ability to respond, adapt, and restore. And maybe that's what this plant offers in its own quiet way. Not a softening exactly, but a kind of steadying. A reminder that the body isn't as fragile as it sometimes feels, that beneath the surface, there's an intelligence already at work. And from that place, from the subtle return to trust, it becomes easier to understand why this plant has been carried, relied on, and returned to for generations. And so, after all of this, the history, science, preparation, and my own experience, we arrive at a place of integration. Let's open up the apothecary cabinet to gently wrap up our deep dive today. Inside, we'll gather everything we've learned and distill it into something simple, something you can carry with you. Here's your summary of Echinacea's ancient and modern superpowers. The immune guide. Rather than simply stimulating the immune system, Echinacea helps modulate it, supporting the body's natural defenses and enhancing its ability to recognize and respond to potential threats. The body's first responder. It supports phagocytosis, the process by which immune cells seek out and neutralize invaders, helping the body move into action more efficiently, especially at the first sign of illness. The tingling messenger. Rich in alkaloids, Echinacea creates that distinctive tingling sensation on the tongue, a signal that it's interacting with the nervous and endocannabinoid systems, helping to reduce inflammation and support pain response. The wound tender. Used both internally and topically, it supports tissue repair, helps protect against microbial invasion, and encourages the body's natural healing process. And while it's helpful to understand what the plant does, the real invitation is to experience it for yourself. I don't typically assign homework here, but if you'd like to experience this herb, I'd encourage you to find Echinacea, whether it's growing in a garden or prepared as a tincture or a tea. If you're able to find the plant itself, take a moment to really look at it. Notice the way it stands, upright, steady, reaching towards the sun. Run your fingers along the stem and gently touch the cone at its center. And if you have access to an Echinacea tincture, I'd invite you to try a small amount. Place a dropper on your tongue and pause. Notice the sensation as it begins to unfold, the subtle tingling, almost like a spark. The small physical reminder that something is happening, that the plant is meeting your body in real time. If you prefer something softer, you can brew a tea and sit with it more slowly, letting the warmth move through you, noticing how your body responds. If you need a place to begin, I've linked a few of my favorite tinctures and tea options in the project notes, so you can bring this plant into your own space. Those are affiliate links that gently support the Green Room Apothecary, a simple way to help keep this project growing at no extra cost to you. And if you feel curious to wander further, you'll also find a full bibliography there with all of the sources that shaped today's episode. Until next time, keep your roots deep and your leaves reaching for the sun. Stay wild and stay well.